Welcome to the MahoganyBooks podcast network, your gateway to the world of African American literature. We're proud to present a collection of podcasts dedicated to exploring the depth and richness of African American literature. Immerse yourself in podcasts like Black Books Matter, the podcast, where we learn about the books and major life moments that influence today's top writers. Or tune in to Real Ballers Read, where brothers Jan and Miles invite amazing people to talk about the meaningful books in their lives. So, whether you're a literature enthusiast, an advocate for social justice, or simply curious about the untold stories that shape our world, subscribe to the MahoganyBooks podcast network on your favorite platform and let African American literature ignite your passion.
How y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? I am so amped up, so pardon me. No, not pardon me. I'm amped up today. I am amped up for a lot of reasons. One, to see your faces here. It means a lot to us. Just a little bit about MahoganyBooks. By show of hands, how many are familiar with MahoganyBooks? Any of you? Okay, good. And I see a few who are not. I love that. So my husband and I created MahoganyBooks about 16 years ago. And at that time, we were in our one-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, thinking about how do we make Black books accessible. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, blocks from Black Wall Street. And let me tell you guys, how many of you, let me see by show of hands, are you familiar with Black Wall Street? A lot of hands. I grew up blocks from Black Wall Street, maybe about a couple miles, actually. I never knew Black Wall Street was there. It was never taught in my schools. Look at your eyes. Some people are like, what? It was never taught in my schools. It was never taught that these entrepreneurs, these thought leaders, these innovators, these amazing Black people lived blocks from my home for a lot of different reasons. And so when we talked about starting MahoganyBooks, my husband and I, we said we never wanted that to be for somebody else, to not know our history, to not have access to those books. And so MahoganyBooks was born from that space. How do we make Black books accessible no matter where you live? Just because I lived in Tulsa, now people who live in Tulsa can order Black books. So I just wanted to make sure you guys know why you're here, who you're here for, so to speak, and understand the mission that's important to us. So every time we host these events, it means something deep to me. It means something deep because you all took time out of your day to join us. This conversation is going to be powerful. You all are in for a treat, not just with one author, but with two authors. So first of all, give yourselves a round of applause. It's a what is it, a flash warning or something out? But I just want to say thank you because this means something to me, that you guys come out and make space to join us. So thank you for joining us. So let's get into it. Y'all did not come to hear about MahoganyBooks. I am excited to bring up our first author who, I'm going to make space, who is someone dear to me. Her name is April Ryan. She's, yes, yeah, I hear you. Go ahead. Yes. The amazing April Ryan. Wow, it's been 27 years. White House correspondent, the longest running Black woman at the White House who is there. Yes, what? Yeah, give that up. Yes, and so I always think about her and the questions that she asked that represent, everybody's waving like, oh, it's April. I think about the questions that she asked. Go ahead.
In my rock star outfit today.
Yes, representing. Yes, and she's someone very dear to me. Also, we have her book here. It's called Black Women Will Save the World, an anthem. And we also have At Mama's Knee back there. So you guys are in for a treat to have both books signed. But she's been in the game a long time. Is that mic working? Let's see.
My mic sounds nice.
Check. One. Don't get us started. Okay. So anyway, I just want to make sure you all had a moment to... Check. Two. Is it working? Now we may have to switch that mic.
No, it's here. Oh, it's there. Okay. My mic sounds nice.
Check one.
Yes.
Hey.
That's it. I see who's in the house today.
You see? So anyway, this...
Wait a minute. For those of you who don't know, raise your hands.
I love it.
Okay, you didn't know? You know who it is.
Oh.
Salt and pepper. Google it.
Oh,
Salt
yes.
and pepper. Google it.
Yes. We love us some old school hip hop.
We're going to go old school hip hop.
We love
Look,
some
kid
hip-hop.
and play dance, they don't know.
Girl, don't get these boots started.
You know, okay.
I gotta say, listen, I gotta stay focused when this sister is in the room. She is very dear to me as a personal friend, but also just as an amazing writer, as an amazing person who is in our culture, making sure our voices are heard on the front line when a lot of people are trying to quiet our voices. This sister right here makes sure we are heard. So give it up for that as well. Yes. She bad. And so I also have the pleasure, I got mics and phones, but I also have the pleasure of bringing up this amazing woman today, the amazing Natasha S. Alford.
Yes.
And her book.
Standing for her.
Yes, let's stand up for the amazing award-winning journalist.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome. It is a pleasure to have Natasha here, and it's a pleasure to close out the formal part of her tour so far. I know more cities will be coming, but to have her here in D.C. and to talk about this, her story in American Negra. Thank you so much for being bold, for writing this book, for making space here for us at MahoganyBooks to share your story. So please give it up for Natasha Alford and April Ryan.
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I came all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, in the rain to this.
I love it.
To this event, this auspicious event this afternoon, and I'm going to do this again. I'm sounding like you look again.
Again.
I'm an again woman. Good afternoon. That's the part, because it's important that you are engaged in this, because at a portion of this conversation, you will be asking questions. I'm into an interactive experience, and I'm into, especially in this town, Washington, D.C., as we're in this crazy political climate with the American Negra. We need to talk about her life and things that are going on. So first of all, how many of you know Natasha from just Friends? Okay.
I see so many familiar faces.
Raise your
My
hand high.
heart is so full.
Don't be ashamed. Raise your hand high. How many of you know her from The Griot? Yeah.
Rio fam.
Griot fam. How many of you know her from CNN? Woo! Okay. All right, cool. But either way, today we're going to let you know about who Natasha Alford is. She's an amazing woman with an amazing story. And how many of you have the book? All right, so for those of you who have the book, we're gonna be turning the pages.
Yeah, we're gonna read today.
Yeah, we're gonna read, we're gonna have a reading, we're gonna have a conversation, etc. So, Natasha, welcome to DC.
This is a dream come true. I just have to pause and process this, because I used to watch you on television.
Oh,
and the idea that we're sitting here together and you're interviewing me about this book after you've inspired me for so many years. You've spoken up for all of us in rooms where we needed to be represented. So thank you for taking the time and being there for me as a sister and a coworker. So thank you. Give it up for April. Thank you.
As a sister and a coworker, I had to say thank you too, because we have been in battle, and I'm not going to get into the battle, but we've been in battle on the same side. And we've had to support one another when tears are flowing. But I salute you, my sister, because you've gone through so much and you still shine no matter what.
Just like you. Thank you.
All right, well, game peeps game.
Yes.
So now we're going to this book. I want to get to know who you are. You are a daddy's girl, and you're a mama's girl. You are a kid who grew up from parents who come from two agrarian families. Sugarcane in Puerto Rico, close to San Juan, and then oranges in Florida. And now you are here, Harvard graduate in Princeton, child, mother, CNN commentator, and griot marquee talent. Talk to me about the American Negra and what it took to get you to this place, because you did not come from a silver spoon.
I didn't, and this story for me is about the American dream. We, right now as a country, are experiencing frustration because we've sold people the American dream. And yet people are saying, I don't see a path for myself. You told me that this was possible if I went to school, if I got the degree, if I took on the student loan debt. And yet there's a gap between expectations and reality. And so what I've always struggled with was this idea that I was a success story coming from Syracuse, but I wasn't satisfied with being the exception. Does that make sense? Yeah. This idea that just because a few people got through and made it, that means that everything is working as it should, that didn't work for me. So I wanted to tell this story to say, this is how it happened. These were the people that showed up for me. This was the way that we were able to bend the system in my favor, but also as a call to action to say, how do we do this for everybody? So that is part of the motivation for writing the book.
And you start off on the very first page, I'm a daughter of northern migrations.
Yeah.
What does it make you feel like in this moment, as we're still trying to deal with an issue of migration that really goes to the heart of the browning of America? And you are that twice.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that, your feelings.
Well, I always say I come from two people who didn't ask to be Americans, if that makes sense. African Americans who we built this country, but we didn't ask to be here. And Puerto Ricans who were inherited after the Spanish-American War in 1898, who also didn't ask to be here. People who had a whole culture, a whole country, and America came in, right, in a very paternalistic way and said, you're citizens, but it's for our benefit. We're gonna give you the cheap paying jobs. We're gonna take resources from the island, the sugar, the gold. And so to be those two people at the intersection of that, you grow up in this country and you say, wow, okay, this is what it means to sort of be at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Why is it that all the Puerto Ricans and the African Americans kind of live together, right? We tend to be in similar neighborhoods, we tend to go to the same schools, and that is, again, because of that racial and social hierarchy. So I thought it was important to write a book that brought those two histories together, that said, this is the shared history that we actually have that nobody wants to talk about. This is what it means to sort of overcome the tensions that people assume exist between Latinos and Black people, which again, those terms are even problematic because Latino is such a big umbrella term and there are Black people under that term. So what does it mean that even in media, we keep saying Latinos and Black people as if they are completely separate? We continue to erase people. So the book tries to retell history and sort of fill in those gaps that we don't know. And for me personally, learning about the plantation that my family came from in Darlington, South Carolina, that came because of this book. Learning about the orange groves that my family used to run in Florida. I mean, all of that came from writing this book. So the call to action for us too is to do the work to understand our family history and our belonging in this country. Because I think some people just want us to think, okay, you know, you came over here and your history started with slavery. But there is so much more to that. And so that is part of the story of the book.
Your father was a staunch Black man who was very much into rights, fist pumping, etc., Malcolm X pictures, and your mother was there with him, but she also believed in quinceañeras as well. How did this marry in your home? Two strong communities. How did it marry? Because your quinceañera wasn't in the Catholic Church, it was in a Black Baptist church, which, you know, how did it marry throughout your childhood and even into the day?
So I say in the book, it was the blackest quinceañera that you've ever seen, because we were playing Jay-Z and Lil Mo, and we had chicken and rice, you know, like that's what we had. But that is the blending of culture. And it's so funny because there's so many people who sit at this intersection who are not just Afro-Latino, but specifically African-American and Puerto Rican. And so that is just an example of that. But I'm gonna read a short passage to start us off today. And this is me and my mother having an argument in the car. Because even though I'm supposed to be both of these cultures, what I find is that I'm meeting a world that's not allowing me to be both. And so if you want to read along, this chapter, it is called Mother Tongue.
And what page?
And this is on page 20.
People are moving. I love this.
I know, we're reading this together. It's amazing. Actually, I'm gonna start on page 21. So this is called Morenita, that paragraph.
The first paragraph?
Yep, right at the top. Morenita, morenita, men have named you. Not Latina, morenita. Negrita chiquita de Estados Unidos, writes poet Tracy Morris. Morena is Spanish for black girl, sometimes referring specifically to the medium brown-skinned women of any black ethnicity, including Afro-Latinas or African-American women specifically. It could be a compliment or a curse. Mommy could not entirely help me interrogate my morena status in society, my negritude, as she did not fully understand her own. She hadn't learned much about slavery in Puerto Rico or the black Puerto Rican leaders like Marcos Cioro, who had revolted and fought for freedom on the island. She just knew that she and we had African blood in our DNA. She knew that she had been called negrita by her own mother, supposedly a term of endearment, but one that marked her as the most black adjacent in her family despite her mixedness. It would be women like Aunt Sin and Mrs. Harper from Saturday Academy who would model black womanhood for me. We spoke the same language. Mrs. Harper always put together, pristine in presentation and confidence. She smelled good and wore Afrocentric printed shawls and dresses that complemented her coiffed short salt and pepper hair. She bought me my first Essence magazine subscription as we sat in her office after Saturday Academy one day. "Oh, you don't have Essence at home, sweetie? Write down your address." Through Mrs. Harper's lessons and the lessons of other women of Saturday Academy, such as Jackie Robinson, the first black female news anchor in Syracuse, I would come to develop an idealized version of black womanhood that equated to regality, community, leadership, and wisdom. And so it would be no surprise that around this time in life, as I turned 13, a primary ethno-racial identity started to form, a black American one. I'm black, I'd say defiantly, not interested in explaining myself to anyone anymore or having to defend my multi-ethnic background. "You are not just black," Mommy snapped when she heard me refer to myself as such on a car ride almost 10 years after our last incendiary road trip. "I'm the one that gave birth to you. You are Puerto Rican and you're African American." Normally demure, she was now worked up. "Well, people don't see me that way," I retorted stubbornly. "So I'm not trying to convince people about it." Our voices tangled and climbed over each other, leaving us both gasping for air during the argument. "Voy a darte un puño." Don't get smart, Natasha. To me, saying I was black was not about downplaying my Puerto Rican roots, but about rejecting a system that seemed to have rejected me by default. I didn't look like the Latinos people expected to see in America. It seemed like everyone else had gotten a clear memo. And not only was it fairer skin that made you Latino in America, but the ability to speak Spanish. And I'll stop there.
We hear, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," you know. We hear so many things about our pride as black people, and at an early age, you recognized what you looked like. And you fought with your mother about that. How long did that fight go on about how you identify yourself?
I would say it lasted for at least 5 or 6 years, because what happened was, I was growing up in a segregated town. This is the Northern Rust Belt. So Syracuse, New York is very black and white. Puerto Ricans kind of like, what is that? And so you had to choose, if that makes sense. People saw you as black, or they saw you as white, or when they thought of Latino, they thought of Mexican, right? They hadn't quite figured out, the difference between nationality and ethnicity. And so we fought about this because my mother was telling me, "You're both," but the world was showing me something different. And so I think it's almost, when you think about biracial kids, you think about, a black father and a white mother. Right. In my case, my mother isn't white, so she understands people of color to some degree, but she doesn't understand what it means to be black. And so as much as she wants me to feel included, I'm saying, well, when I look at the Latina magazine, everybody's white? Why is their hair all straight? When I go to that side of the family, I'm not the pretty one traditionally, right? It took me a long time to see myself as beautiful because the standard of Latinidad wasn't one that made room for someone like me. So as much as my mother wanted me to accept that I could be both, it took a long time for me to find my people, April, if that makes sense. And I found my people with Afro-Latinos, and that's sort of the journey you see in the book.
And you're not alone. There are Afro-Latinos out here that you would think, oh, they're just light-skinned black people. Let's talk about Sunny Hostin on The View.
Right.
Yeah, Sunny, and she did something wonderful for you. Can you read that?
Yeah. She wrote the one blurb I have in my book. Sunny said, in her searing debut, Alford smartly and candidly examines what it means to be Black and Latina in America and interrogates identity, class, and race and success on her terms. American Negra is required reading for anyone longing to understand the intricacies of intersectionality in this country and be inspired in the process. I'm honored that she wrote that for me. And Sunny is
deep.
I mean, she's the only example I had of somebody who was right at that intersection as well. So she understood what it was like to be invisible in one culture, welcomed and sort of accepted as Black in another culture. But also, when we think of Latinos, I mean, again, we still are thinking light skin, wavy hair, right? That's our conception of Latinos. But when I go to Puerto Rico, there are people with locks, there are people with dark brown skin. And you know what they're facing? They're facing people who come to them. One immigrant agent, he was an ICE agent, approached a Puerto Rican woman and asked for her papers, assuming that she was Dominican and she wasn't actually a citizen. So even when you're supposed to be at home in your culture, a racially mixed culture, Black Latinos are still being profiled. And that is the story that we have to elevate and talk about.
That is so crazy. I just look at people as people. And if I see you, you look like me, I embrace you. If you don't look like me, I embrace you. It's the heart for me, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But, you, and I think about, as I'm listening to the story, I keep thinking about that viral moment you had on CNN about race. You remember that? Oh, it went viral. Can you lay the groundwork as to what happened and what you said? Because as you're talking about this intersectionality, you were viewed, in my opinion, as a Black person at that time.
Yep.
So talk to me, lay the groundwork as to that situation.
Well, early in the book, I write about being pulled over by the police with my family and how my father gets profiled, but my mother doesn't. So even though she's a person of color and she's a Latina, when we're pulled over by the cops, they want my dad's license. And they're very focused on my dad, who is darker skinned. And so basically what I'm saying is that from a young age, I see that our rhetoric of colorblindness is not reality, right? And it's not to say that we shouldn't aspire to a day when race doesn't matter, but the material reality in America is one where race does matter. And we are encountering people who want to erase history. They want to erase data. They want to erase facts and say that we are somehow, sort of being emotional or illogical when we bring race into conversations, when the data shows us, whether you're talking about police cameras, speed cameras in Black neighborhoods, or the money.
They're more sophisticated now with their attacks. They're more sophisticated, but it's there.
It's so true. And so what I ask of us to do with this book and in general is to hold on to our sense of what is true. Because in this age of disinformation, people are literally making their own facts. And they are gaslighting us on the regular about things that we know to be true.
Yeah. So as you were finding yourself in this beautiful home of two different cultures that melded and created a beautiful woman.
Thank you.
You had a love for an HBCU. She wanted to go to, who's a Howard person over here? Oh, Lord, have mercy. Okay. I knew.
You can always find one person.
Okay.
I knew I was going to see the hands go up.
Okay. It's like I set myself up all the time. I'm a Morgan State grad. I'm so glad I went to Morgan State. Yay. So anyway, it doesn't have that
We
kind
have
of
love for all of you.
I know. It doesn't have that bang that, ain't you know, all that stuff. Okay, fine. She wanted to go to Howard. She wanted to go to an HBCU. But life sent her a different place, to Harvard.
Shout out to all my Harvard people in the audience.
Y'all just as bad as HU, okay? But she attended Harvard. And that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And I get the tension about it in your home because, and I think about this, and I did the same thing. I'm a second generation Morganite. I love HBCUs. And I love my university, got an honorary doctorate and everything. My mother's honored there and everything. However, my daughter goes to American University. Right. But
she's in college, April. It's still okay.
Wait a minute.
You did a good job, Mom. She's in school.
I got her in there, and I'm proud that she's there. Stop, y'all. No, but I'm proud that she's there, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Dr. King didn't just want us in our own spaces. Yes. He wanted us every place. Yes. So there's a space and a place for everyone and everything. As I laugh and joke about Harvard and Howard, these are two exceptional schools in this nation, top 100 schools. And my daughter is in a top 100 school.
You should be proud.
I am.
You are. Yeah.
But the focus is on the tension about you and Harvard. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that from the book.
Well, okay, so...
And you come from humble beginnings.
That's right. And this is what I want people to understand really quickly about what you said. For the Harvard alums who are in this audience, we know there are people who would love nothing more than for us to stop applying. To take this moment of anti-DEI energy and to go elsewhere, because all it does is create more space for them to come in. They don't have to worry about resistance. They don't have to worry about meeting our needs, right? So my message is that we should always have a choice, right? We should always invest in Black institutions, but we should always give people a choice. It's too easy to say, just don't apply to these schools. And what I wanted was resources. I went to an underfunded school district, less than 50% of students graduated from there. And I just wanted to go to school once in a place that gave me everything that I needed. That was all I wanted.
And you were a good student. You worked hard. Even when you made your father mad, you said some curse words you knew in your vocabulary. But you wanted to appease him and yourself at the same time.
Yeah, so the scene that I will read for you is when I actually get in. And this is on, let's see. This is on page 94. The chapter is called Golden Ticket. And the reason why I'm reading this scene is because I want people to understand that a lot of us make assumptions when we hear that somebody went to a certain school about what their story is or what their background is. But in my case, it wasn't what you would think. We always see people celebrating when they get into college. It was a little different from me. So I'll read this part for you, starting at the paragraph that says after school.
Follow along.
After school, I headed to our house on Garfield Avenue. I got in. I repeated to myself, trying to make it feel real. The high of the news was still fresh on my ears, the disbelief just as strong. Daddy was sitting in the rocking chair underneath our family photos in the living room, watching TV when I got home. I prepared myself to tell news that can only be delivered once. Daddy, I said, the words jockeying and pushing each other down to get out of my mouth. What? He asked, slightly annoyed at the interruption. I got into Harvard. I was breathless, beaming with pride. Daddy paused for a second, slanted his head to the side, and looked at me, his dark sunglasses covering his eyes. Harvard? His face twisted up like he just tasted a cup of rancid milk. Why the hell would you want to go there? My excitement crashed and evaporated into 1,000 small pieces like a plate of china knocked off a table. I should have known Daddy was unimpressed by these institutions. Despite all his encouragement to get an education, he was also still holding out hope I'd join the military as he had.
Ooh, boy.
It's the #1 school in the country, Daddy. It's really hard to get in. It was my reach school. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. He muttered and went back to watching TV. I was 0 for 1, but I still had one more shot with Mommy. Maybe as a college-educated woman who helped me fill out the FAFSA and taken me to Saturday Academy, she would understand just how big a deal this was. About an hour later, I heard the wooden door creak, signaling she was home. Mommy, I got into Harvard. I got in. She looked at me with the exhausted eyes of a woman who worked a long day, carrying too many bags that were too heavy with not enough help, still trying to figure out what she'd order for dinner that night. That's good, Tasha, but if they don't give you the money, you can't go. We'll just see what happens, she said, dropping her big purse onto the chair. Mom, I protested. Really? Tasha, that's great, but I just got home from work. Let me take a look at everything first. I quietly stomped off to my room. Unlike with Daddy, it was safe to be mad at Mommy, to show her I was mad. Some people can never live up to their parents' expectations. In my case, I had exceeded expectations, and it didn't seem to make a difference either way. Yet I was still deeply torn. What about Howard? Did it even matter that I still wanted to go? You're not seriously going to turn down Harvard, right? What decision is there to make? Asked Mr. Little, my favorite AP history teacher, who didn't sugarcoat anything and said exactly what he thought at all times. Mr. Little had worked in Syracuse schools forever and was a graduate of them too. He knew what this admission represented and how it defied the low expectations people often had of city school grads, no matter the color of their skin. I mean, I may still go to Howard, I said, digging in. It's a good school and I got a full ride. I didn't like the implication that because I'd gotten into a richer school, a whiter school, it was somehow better, or better for me. My HBCU dream was soul deep, a chance to be affirmed in ways that I hadn't been thus far in my entire education in this snowy, segregated town. But as I looked at Mr. Little's bewildered face, his unfiltered words pierced the defense I'd put up. He was right, I figured. People like me could never turn down the opportunity to go to a place like Harvard. I'd gotten a golden ticket like the one Charlie wanted so badly for Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. There were some people like Veruca Salt who could easily have bought their golden ticket into college and did. Some people like Violet with their accolades and perfect test scores had the resources to increase their chances. Kids like Augustus Gloop had everything given to them, so a college admission was just another delicacy. And some, like Mike TV with their smarts, knew the ins and outs of places like these with ease. I was no poor kid without shoes on my feet like Charlie, but it did seem I had extremely good luck. Not taking this admission seat seemed ungrateful. If I wanted to change my and my family's life, I didn't have a right to turn it down. And that's that section.
Wow.
It's a lot, right? There's layers. There's layers.
As your parent, I would have sent you to Harvard. Mm-hmm. And I would have said you always have a chance to go back to get your PhD or your master's at Howard. They have a great master's and master's program. And, I don't know if they have a great master's program in media. I don't know if they have a PhD. I don't know yet, but I'll find it. Do y'all know from HU? Okay, you don't know? Okay. All right. But I would have said something like that. But let's move quickly because I know people have questions and comments because this has been such a rich conversation thus far. But let's move into now, okay, you've graduated Harvard. I'm looking at my career path. You've come from this, you go to here, and now where do I go? How do I do this? How did your parents factor in, again, when it came time to find that career path?
So I won't give away too much of the book because there is a reason why I make a certain decision coming out of school. I go and I work in the corporate world, which is something that a lot of people do coming out of places like Harvard or the Ivy League. My motivation was more than just money. It was really about security. And I think the message of sharing that chapter is that too often there are young, talented Black people, and we think that just by sending them to a school, we've done enough for them. But what happens is they get into the institution and they don't know how to navigate it. And that was the case for me. So even though I wanted to be a journalist like a April Ryan, there was no journalism major at Harvard. So what did I do? I imitated the people around me. And what were they doing? They were going to finance. They were going to consulting. They were going to hedge funds, a word that I didn't even know what that meant when I went off to school. So I went and I did that, and I knew this is not for me. and you read about how I figure out how to leave. And then I go and I become a teacher. And some of my students are in the audience right now.
Where are the students? Raise your hand.
I see them.
Oh,
they're right there.
Waving with enthusiasm. Was she a good teacher?
Oh, my God.
All right. Would you tell me if she was bad?
Well, you know, but in all seriousness, I love teaching. I love those children right there. They're not children anymore.
But that's what you're doing now, though.
And that's what journalism was to me. But I'll tell you why I left, though. Because I was so frustrated with the system, right? You recruit young people, you tell them to become teachers, and then you hand them a broken system. I'm getting a student who reads at a first grade level, and I'm being told they have to read, you know, they're an 8th grader, basically. How, as a 23-year-old, was I supposed to navigate that? It was almost too much pressure, and I felt like I was failing them every single day. As much as they felt like I was a good teacher, I felt like I was failing them, right? So that experience led me to go into education policy because I thought to myself, we can change the system. We okay? I know the cricket is going.
Honey, let me tell you something.
Anybody
Don't be ashamed. Just get the phone.
Anybody want to help them out? Okay.
But you know, I'm gonna tell you, I know.
I'm trying to go deep with y'all, but
I didn't want to interrupt you.
I can't go deep with the cricket going.
Natasha, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm telling you, everybody's looking around at each other. Ramonda's looking at me, and then she finding where it's coming from. I'm like, oh.
That's
and she got up and get ready to walk. But anyway.
It takes a village, and the cricket is gone, so we're good.
Amen.
All right. Okay.
But listen, in some parts of it, I found my... Don't be ashamed. Just take the phone.
Just get
if you don't understand,
somebody help
somebody else, yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you, I'm not good. You will. Everybody knows on my job, I'm technologically challenged. They laugh at me. You get it, yes, and they laugh at me. They think I'm trying to be funny, but I'm not. But it's okay. It takes a village. It takes a village. But listen, when it comes to this profession, my dad. And I felt you in that. In a lot. This whole book, I saw a lot of my parents. My parents are gone on to glory. And with my dad, before he died, he had dementia and he was very ill. And I didn't have a chance to reconcile with him. You are doing it now, and I love that for you. I don't want to give away things, but she is. But I thought about, I had a very strong father too. And he did not want me to get in this career that I'm in now. I know, right? He said to me, April, you're not going to get paid. He thought I was just going to go off and be like, I don't know how many of you from Baltimore, but we used to have like little black radio. I did once work at James Brown Radio, WEBB, getting paid $5 an hour. And those checks, the salary checks would bounce. You know, he thought I was going to be on like these little small stations. I said, no, and I worked to prove him wrong like you did, in your book. Yeah. So it's you got to read this. It's so wonderful. And pass it forward for Mother's Day gifts and all sorts of Christmas gifts. Buy Christmas gifts now, Kwanzaa gifts, what have you. But seriously, you will find yourself in this, in some parts, talking about whoever your guardian or your parent was, or the person who was that ear above you to help you sort through. You find yourself in this book, and it's just so amazing. But I want to get to, we talked about you and your parents back and forth, but I want to get to the piece about healing with you and your parents, because, your mother wanted you to identify partially as Puerto Rican, and you were like, I'm black and I'm proud, because that's what people saw. And then there are other things, you're a wonderful person, but you were a smart-mouthed kid back in the day.
Very stubborn.
Yeah. Stubborn, and you used some curse words too. Mm-hmm. And your dad I know, right? Your dad got upset. And you worked those things out. And I know you care so much for your parents to this day. So tell me how you're working through all of that, being a child and now being adult, to make them see that you are that person that loved them all the way through.
Well, writing this book was healing for our family, because I think a lot of people in this audience can relate to, there are things that you've never said out loud to your parents. because you might be afraid, because culturally we just don't do that, right? We don't ask questions about what happened or share our feelings about what happened. And for me, a big theme in this book is tension with my father over what he wants me to do, whether it's, going to the military instead of going to college, or just in general expressing my opinion. But there's something that happens in the book with his health, which right now he's actually fighting. He's in the hospital getting a stem cell transplant because he has cancer. And
she's been with him every step of the way.
Yeah. And it was those conversations going to the hospital where I would interview him for the book. And the book gave me a good excuse to have conversations with my own father that I was afraid to have, or I didn't have an opening to have. And it was so healing because I understood him as a person. I understood the mistakes that he made with a lot more empathy as an adult. And so the book was, again, a good excuse. But he read the book, and having him read the book and say, this is a good story, you have my blessing to tell it, that changed everything in our relationship.
Amen. Amen. Whew, it's bringing many of us to tears. I know for me, before my father died, he died during all of this crazy mess with the last president. I'm not going to say his name. Y'all know. You said, you know that.
Well, if y'all don't show up, he'll be the next president, so.
She said it, I didn't, because they're not going to come after me for that one. Because, whoo, child.
The way it's looking, though.
I know, but and he's talking about retaliation, but I'll never forget, before my father passed away, and the week before he passed away, he had clarity. And he said to my aunts, what's the FBI saying about all of this? And he was concerned. And the day before he died, he knew my name and knew my face. And I was just thankful. So, working through these books are cathartic. They really are. So
there were people who I called who I hadn't spoken to in years to ask for their blessing. Because generally as a writer, a new writer, I don't want somebody to open up a book and say, she wrote about that and she didn't ask me.
You talked about me. Oh,
right. So I called pretty much almost every person. There are a couple people who I didn't reach out to. And there are stories we tell ourselves about what happened or our relationship to someone, or we feel shame or we feel anxiety, and that person has let it go. Sometimes we're carrying baggage that we should have let go. And so through writing this book, I was able to reconnect with people and realize maybe our relationship isn't so bad, right? Or that thing that happened, they forgave me for that. Or that thing that happened, I should forgive them for that. And even if you don't write a book in this audience, my message to you is to think about what stories you're telling yourself that you need to tell differently. The good thing about writing a memoir is that it marks time. You're making meaning of your past, but also so you can move on to what's next. And I think that whether you write a book or not, we can all do that in our lives.
Journal or something if you don't want to write a book, but I think we all have a story. Before we go into questions, how many of you got questions? Start thinking. If you don't, okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, we got
the audience questions is the best part for all of this. Yeah. So please ask questions.
So get your questions ready. What is it that you want this group to know about this book? Most importantly, American Negra. American Negra.
So I wrote this book because I wanted there to be an American success story that centered a young Black girl. We often think about the American dream. Again, we keep hearing it, but I wasn't seeing a story that centered a young Black girl. And so many people who I'm looking at in this room have very similar stories of, again, being the exception, being the smart one, the high achiever. But I also wanted to complicate that notion and to say that just because a young person has good grades, it doesn't mean that they're not struggling internally. They might have depression. They might have issues with self-confidence. And so we need to take down the mask and sort of disrupt this concept of what success looks like to make sure that we're raising young people who actually love themselves and are not just seeing their value in their productivity, their achievements, and what they can do. And so I wanted people to know, not just me for the sake of knowing me, but so many people like me who we may be successful on paper, but it was a struggle to get what we have. And it was also a struggle to love ourselves. And so that's the call to action for all of us. And I really hope this story inspires you. If it doesn't inspire you personally, that you will find someone in your life who's inspired by it.
Can somebody get me some tissues? Because I'm seeing people crying and it's getting me upset. I'm just hand me some tissues. It is, whew. How many of you been touched this afternoon?
Thank you for coming out in the rain.
Yes.
Like, thank you. I'm just amazed. I'm going to cry after.
Yeah.
Because it's not often that you leave a city and you come back years later and people remember you, enough to spend their afternoon with you. So this is truly a blessing to me. And this is the last stop. I've been on the road for weeks. So this is the last stop before I take a rest. And this is the perfect note to end
There's
on.
a person I'm seeing, I'm not going to say anything, but at the end, I'm going to hug you hard because I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. Thank you. Come here for a minute. All right. Oops. Oh, shoot. All right. So for those who have questions, raise your hand. Young man. Yes, you're first.
I have a microphone here.
Yes.
Speaking to the mic because we are recording, okay? In questions, not a summary. I'm just joking.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for your beautiful words. I'm really excited to get into all of your words. Thank you, for one. My question is about labels specifically and dealing with labels. Just a little bit of context. I have been in courtship with someone that I've asked to be my girlfriend. She has said no. I'm on trial. It's okay.
I was going to say congratulations.
But you're still on trial and she said no?
I'll wait. Okay.
She said no and you still on trial?
No. Just like there's just more courtship to go on.
There's still more work to do.
Yes,
I get
more
it.
work to do
I respect it.
Personal things. But she has been dealing with the fact of her blackness and her whiteness. And there are times when she goes into thinking about things that she learns from her white side of her family as well as her black side of her family and trying to maneuver around all of those labels. And sometimes she's like, I would just want to throw it into the trash. And then there's times when she's like, I feel all of those things. So my question for you is, when it comes to labels, when it comes to you labeling yourself, when it comes to the world labeling of you, what do you do when you just feel tired? Like, what do you do? How do you get up in the world and be like, I actually get to choose how to define who I am? Like, what has been that process for you? Is it just the book, or was there something that you just had a moment in your mind, or is it still hard for you to deal with today? I'm wondering about your feelings on labels.
Well, that's a beautiful question. Thank you for asking it. I had gotten tired of people asking me a few things. Why don't you speak Spanish?
But you do it beautifully.
Well, thank you. I'm not fluent, but I talk about why I don't in the book. What are you? Because depending on where I go, people see a different thing. In DC, I'm Ethiopian. In New York City, I'm Dominican.
I'm Dominican in New York City.
Are you Dominican in New York
City? I am Dominican. I'm
my
telling
Dominican
you.
sister. Okay.
Yes. I can't speak Spanish, but I'm Dominican.
In Brazil, I was seen as like I'm from Brazil. So having people project on you what they think you are can be exhausting. Having people question why you don't know something, that can be exhausting. And so I wrote this book to reclaim my story, to say I'm not ashamed. The reason I don't speak Spanish is because my mother had to carry a dictionary in school to learn English, and her teachers made her feel bad about making mistakes. And she was told that if I was bilingual, I would be confused, and she didn't want me to struggle. And like a lot of families, she let that language go. She talked to me, but let me speak in English to her so I understand it, but I respond in English. I mean, that's not just a Puerto Rican thing. That's something that happens to a lot of people who assimilate and feel that they have to lose their culture to be American, right? So this story is about reclaiming and saying, I'm not ashamed of these things. This is who I am. I'm not going to pretend to be something. I'm also not going to deny what I am to try to make it easier, because there's also a part where I perm my hair and I say, look, I'm just African American. But even that is a denial of my roots and my history. So this book is my reclamation, and my hope is that generally it creates a portrait that helps the world understand people like me, so that they aren't questioned, but also that we understand each other better. Because let's be very real, African Americans are so accepting because we had no choice. Because of slavery, because of rape. You know how many children who are walking around with their master's blood in their bodies, right? The families that were broken apart, mothers who watched their children be sent off to different plantations. So your idea of family and community is different when that's your history. And you can be more accepting and welcoming because you have to create community. You have to redefine family. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to think about who we are, what community looks like, what family looks like, and maybe to broaden that. So for the person who is in your life, I encourage her to not be afraid to investigate her history and also to rewrite it for herself.
I'm gonna say something to you. She may say yes when you take this back to her. Because, brother, I don't know. She said no, and you still trying. You're a good one.
I'm gonna sign her book.
You are a good one.
I'm gonna sign a book for her. That's gonna seal the deal. Okay.
And you better let us know. You better DM us, and we're gonna put it on here. But let me say this. Come on in. Hey, did you see
my teaching colleague, my former teaching colleague?
All right, that's fine. But she gonna come in here and disturb the class.
No.
That's a problem.
Yes. All right. I love it. I haven't seen some of these faces. I haven't seen in years. Some of these people helped me when I was a baby teacher. Aww. I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, she's disruptive. I don't know if she's a teacher.
No.
She's disruptive. But anyway. Girl, sit down. Oh, wait a minute. Did I just say sit down to somebody?
You sound like a teacher right now,
No, I
April.
sound like Trump.
Ooh.
Yeah, ooh. Yeah,
sorry, shuddered.
So, I know, but let me say this, and I'm gonna, but all jokes aside, this has been so amazing.
It has been. Do we have one more question?
Oh, yeah, we got more questions.
Okay.
Wait a minute, hold on. We got this young lady here, and then this man in front of her, Ramunda, and then we're gonna go back to this gentleman, and then the gentleman in the blue. But come on, Miranda, come on down, Oprah, as she's going down. Here's what I wanna say. I am sick and tired of labels. We check every box. Are you this? Are you black? Are you African American? Do you have Latina? It's also, what happened to personhood? Just being a person. Then, do you have a learning difference? Do you have you check a box so much. What does it mean in the long run? What about who we are just as people communing together?
But we didn't ask for that, April.
That's what I'm saying, but I hate it.
I hate it too, but here's the other thing. We have to have accountability. And so, if you don't track the populations, if you don't track the income difference,
when you see me walk in the door, you see my blackness first, and then I'm a woman. I'm just sick of it. Where everybody's put into groups. It takes the humanity out of it. And I just hate that. But that's just me. I'm sorry.
No. And I think part of it is stories like this that, again, remind you of the humanity. Remind you of family, remind you of relationship, so that you can better understand the people who maybe fall into a certain category.
To me, in this room, we are all like-minded. We are one.
Yes.
I don't care what color, what race. We're here to commune. And we're not checking boxes. I just don't like that box checking. But when the census comes, I'm gonna check a box. But anyway. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm very proud of your success as a young woman, but you have so much more living to do. Will you consider writing a book for the second half of your success?
Yes. I think she would. She's got a lot on the way.
I don't know if I'll do another memoir. There's a shift that's happening within me. For a long time, when I would get to a place, I wanted to get to the next place right away. And I didn't understand why. Like, why was I like that? Like, why couldn't I just be happy with the thing that I just achieved? And I'm realizing it's because a lot of my self-worth was contingent on performing. it was contingent on people noticing. It's that little girl who's like, I got into Harvard, Daddy, do you see it? And him not seeing it, not giving me the validation I needed. So there's something about, I had a son, he's turning 3 next week, and when I see him, I want freedom for him. I don't want the chains of Black excellence on him, where he feels like the antidote to fighting racism and discrimination is having to be twice as good, because the truth is that's never enough. I want him to love himself for who he is. So because of that, I myself am shifting from a performance-based, sort of achievement-based kind of journey to one that is about appreciating where I'm at. And this book was a labor of love. I'm just gonna sit in it. I graduate from Princeton in about 6 weeks or 2 months. It's coming up. Thank you.
But wait a minute. You don't know this journey, though. And this journey is amazing. And I applaud you. They don't understand, but I applaud you. She is a mother. The baby isn't not 3 yet.
He'll be 3 next week. Yeah.
He'll be 3. She's got a knee baby and going to Princeton and working a full-time job, writing a book. Come on. And that's what I know. That's just what I know. And a fiance.
That is a job. That, relationships are work. And then the last piece we didn't talk about, but I have lupus, right? So living with lupus is also a full-time job. And when I got the diagnosis, I was so mad at God, because I was like, why would you give me this right as my career felt like it could take off, right? Why would you give me something that requires me to slow down and to pull back? But I understand now that this is with me so I can take care of myself, because the person that existed before would not stop for anything. My body was just a tool to get where I wanted. I didn't care about my health. And so now I'm forced to take care of myself, and I'm forced to say no, and I'm forced to reevaluate what matters, and that's what I'm doing right now. So thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Stand up, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting. So I want to say thank you for writing this book. I am the son of a Black father and a Puerto Rican mother, so it definitely speaks to me, and also from Ohio too, so Rust Belt connection for sure.
Oh yeah, it's different out there.
Oh, it's very different. So I live in DC now. I work in federal service here in DC. And so my question for you is, what keeps you going? What keeps you showing up every day? I think it's particularly difficult in these times. You all alluded to it. In the era of these politics today, it can be difficult, or it's easy to kind of check out, particularly for our generation. So I'd like to know what keeps you plugged in.
Before you answer, do you feel that you're negated from all that you hear because of your culture, from both beautiful cultures intersecting?
I think for me, I have come to the intersection a little differently, because I was also raised by my abuelita. And so growing up speaking Spanish was very important to me, while trying to, I guess, connect more to my Latinidad. Yeah. And so I really tried to do that via studying abroad and learning to speak Spanish. But with that being said, being in DC or being in other places, I'm looked at as only being Black. And so, yeah.
You're in Chocolate City, so you look Black, but you are, you're a Black.
Well, he's racially Black, and culturally, ethnically, he's African American and Puerto Rican.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But couldn't he be racially both?
No, because Puerto Rican's not a race, and Latino is not a race.
Okay, preach. Okay.
And so this is we didn't get into the history because we've been sort of talking generally, but this is a political strategy to create Latino, right? That's a creation. You're talking about 20 plus countries, different dialects of Spanish, different histories. To be Mexican is not to be Dominican, is not to be Puerto Rican. And they've created this Latino category for political reasons. They also...
One size fits all, and it doesn't.
And also to distance themselves from Black people. Because for many, to be Latino is to be Hispanic. And that is European, and that is refined, and that is somehow more elevated than the Black roots, right, or the Black influence. And in Puerto Rico specifically, they would immigrate, they would have European immigrants come in to mix with the population to make it whiter. These are the sorts of policies that we're talking about. So when we talk about Latinidad, it's something that we have to interrogate. And I know a lot of people get offended because that is part of their identity. You know, there's communities, there's organizations, there's all these things that have been built under that name. But we have to interrogate what's broken about it, what's inaccurate about it, so that we actually can move with honesty and integrity.
That part. Now, to his question, he said, how do you keep going?
Well, our ancestors didn't have the luxury of checking out. They're the reason why we're here. And if they could find a reason to keep going in the face of slavery, in the face of Jim Crow, in the face of segregation, I feel kind of privileged being a Harvard grad, working in television, being like, I'm just too tired. It's not to say that the feelings of despondency are not legitimate, because we are living in times of despair. We are living in times where we're being attacked. If you believe in spiritual warfare, we're being attacked all the time with bad news, negativity. But I do believe in the power of goodness. And that was part of this story, is when I weave together the story, I said there were people who intervened on my behalf, who did good things for me that changed my entire life. What does it mean if we all do that for somebody? And so that was the call to action, that people would read this book and feel inspired and say, how can I do this for a young person? So that's what keeps me going.
Amen. Can you say abuela? What is it? How do you say abuelita?
My abuelita.
Say it again.
Abuelita.
It's like granny. Abuela.
Say it again. Abuelita.
My mom's story.
Okay, we have two more questions. The gentleman in the back, the distinguished gentleman in the back, and then the gentleman in the blue with the T.
April, I love you. No one else could lead the conversation like this.
I like to inform, but yet have laugh.
This is really how we talk, though, behind the scenes.
Yeah. Oh my God, on the morning calls.
On the morning calls.
When I used to be
phone.
on. But no, we like to inform. We like to bring information. But we have had tears. We've had like you're in church. This has been so beautiful, and I'm just going to say it. It's just beautiful, and I thank you all for showing up and coming out. Yes, sir.
Why the title?
That's a great question.
He asked it and sat down.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Negra soy. Negra, negra, negra. A negra is a black woman. And what I wanted people to know was that no matter where I went in the world, people saw me as a black woman. And in Latin America, if you're a black woman walking through the street, somebody might call you negra, or they might call you morena, or something like that. But it is a compliment or a curse. It all depends on how they say it. So people say, my negrita, which really is kind of weird because it translates to my blackie, which is a little,
we don't like
my
that.
little black girl, like it's a little
like
weird. But there are also people who hurl it as a curse if they're like arguing with you. And what I want people to know is that there is a narrative that there are Afro-Latinos who just don't want to be black. That's just way too simple, because I keep meeting Afro-Latinos who are proud that they're black, who've known that they've been black from day one, right? Who their countries make it known that they're black. And that we have a shared experience with them. Arturo Schomburg, if you've walked in Harlem, you've walked by the Schomburg Center for Black Research and Culture. He's a black Puerto Rican man. How many of us knew that? I know I didn't know it for years walking by. But he came here from Puerto Rico, was part of the Harlem Renaissance, hung out with Langston Hughes, right? I mean, these are our people. They've been part of the black community forever. They've been in the civil rights movement. They've gone to HBCUs. And so making Afro-Latinidad visible was important, but also showing that we are more than just people who are black and don't know it. And that there's something valuable in us knowing and loving our blackness.
Yeah, the word negro is black, so negra, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, and last, what you say?
Negro also means slave.
Right, so there's Negro with
But
an E.
I'm talking in Spanish, though.
Right. There's Negro with an E. So it's actually a different word entirely. So
it's negro in
Spanish. And
Spanish.
negra, which translates to black. But the point is taken that it's hurled as an insult.
Right.
And there are people who also will call you slave in Spanish, and that's supposed to be an insult because it's the same problem. Being taught that you were just slaves and nothing more and contributed nothing more. That's a struggle that's happening in Latin America right now.
I'm going to test your news mind. Didn't they take Negro off of the census? Didn't they just take it off, or is it still there?
I don't know if
they just took it off. Yeah, I think because that was a big question. Because the age of those who were taking the census still remembered the word Negro, not African American. So if it's not off, there was a conversation. The young lady says it was, but if it's not off, there was a conversation about the word being there because it's offensive to some. It's very offensive to some.
And don't our terms always evolve? I mean, we went from colored. There's colored, Negro, African American. Some people don't even like African American. They're like, I'm just black. So the point is,
black incorporates a lot of things.
It does. Yeah, it does. But the point is just that our terms evolve over time.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, and I shouldn't, but I'm going to tell you. So Stevie Wonder that night, we had that conversation about wanting to talk to Biden. He was like, African Americans. He's so there are some people who are still very much into the words African American versus the blank, because he was like, the blanket is black, because a lot of people have not, in this country who are black, have not experienced or have the lineage of slavery. Right. So that's the qualifier, I guess. Yeah. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Our last question, sir.
Thank you so much for writing your book.
Thank you.
Can't wait to read it. My question is, or not really a question, just wanted to get your thoughts on it. You mentioned shared experiences, and many of us had that with people around the world. So I was wondering your thoughts about the border crisis, or the border.
The border crisis.
Yeah.
What is your thought about the border crisis?
I think this book is even more relevant because of the border crisis. And that's because there are political actors who are looking to exploit the crisis to divide ethnic groups, right? They're purposefully sending Latino migrants into African American neighborhoods to cause a fight, to create a scarcity mindset and say, look, we've been neglected for years. We don't have enough resources. Why would we share with these new people who are coming in? And Fox is more than happy.
Fox what?
Fox, I call them Fox because they're just a
Sly
brand.
ass.
They're a brand. I wouldn't say they're news.
Y'all got that good.
Yes, and they're sly. Yes, I got that. But they're more than happy to exploit it, right? And so in this book, you will hear about how African Americans and Puerto Ricans in New York City work together, right, to demand labor rights in garment factories. They work together to go on strike in New York public schools in the 60s and 70s. There was the Black Panthers and the Young Lord Party working together when they took over a hospital, right? Well, the Young Lords took over a hospital, but they had African American members. And 2,000 Puerto Ricans went to the March on Washington at the invitation of Bayard Rustin. So this is the best of communities coming together and recognizing that the person who is oppressing you, it's not each other. You're both marginalized, and that there's power in unity. And so I think we need this message now more than ever because our immigration system has been broken for a long time. It's not one president who's responsible for that. And the rhetoric has shifted. There were Democrats who were hostile to immigration for years, and there were Republicans who were saying, we're a city on the hill. But what people want us to do is to forget that history, to exploit it for political purposes, and not to fix it because there was legislation just put up that could have passed, that could have immediately addressed problems. And what did Donald Trump do? He said, don't let it pass because that's a win for Democrats. What about a win for America? What about what we need? So there are people who are prioritizing politics over advancing what's best for our country, and hopefully we can change that.
And I just want to add something simple. Yes, there is an immigration crisis. You're saying a border crisis. The whole thing, we keep focusing, and again, the browning of America. The browning
People are terrified of it.
Exactly. Someone very high up in this administration, I cannot say who, said one of the reasons why people are very concerned about the border, that's seeing more of an influx of black and brown versus there are Chinese people, all kinds of people come to that border, but it's more black and brown. It's more brown and black, let's say that. But one of the reasons why there's a concern, because there was a report came out, listen to this. There was a report that came out that there are less Europeans coming into this country.
That's concerning to some people.
Right. 2045, we're supposed to be what? We're supposed to be this group. We're supposed to be the majority of this nation, the population. There is a fear of the browning of America. And lastly, I'm going to leave you on this because this is about her. But here's one thing that we're not considering. There's a problem at the border, but we are seeing the overstaying of visas triple in number. And they are not people who look like us that are overstaying. So they keep focusing in on the border, but yet not doing anything about that. Please use your critical thinking when you look at this situation. I'm telling you, we're coming up in the next couple of months to vote. Please vote, and please take a look at really what's going on and use your Harvard intellect, even if
whatever brain you have is fine.
Whatever.
I'm a little mad at Harvard right now, so just whatever brain you want to use.
But I want to say thank you to my colleague. This woman welcomed me into the Rio, and I'm so thankful for her today. And African Negra, please get this and buy several copies, forward them to people, because we need to know what's going on. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful Saturday. We're doing a book signing in the back.
Discover a world where words ignite change. Tune in to Black Books Matter, the podcast, where we celebrate the profound impact of African American literature. Join us as we delve into iconic works and hidden gems, discussing their power to shape minds and transform societies. Get ready for thought-provoking discussions, author interviews, and insights that matter. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Black Books Matter, the podcast, on your favorite podcast platform, and let the voices of African American authors resonate with